All right, double checking. I notice I haven't been putting out actually a Star Wars thing in a while, so without further ado, going back to the source, here we're covering the origins of names and the kind of multicultural influences on Star Wars from the OT to PT to ST. So this is a lot. I'm just going to try to pack in quite a few things. All right, so let's get started with Padme is probably the most obvious. Padma is a word in Sanskrit, and Amidala can be two things. It can be Ami, French, and Dala means party. But Amidala can also be Italian, which means beautiful flower. And obviously, Natalie Portman's a very beautiful woman, so there's probably a couple of different connotations. Then we get to Qui-Gon Jinn, and this is a little complicated. I think technically Qui-Gon should be pronounced Qigong in Chinese, which means life force, basically. And Jinn comes from the Arabic, which means genie. That's actually where we get the word genie. It comes from the Arabic. Spanish is a little bit more straightforward. Han Solo is the most obvious. Solo means alone in Spanish. Ahsoka Tano. Tano is also a Spanish word, and I'm not a big Ahsoka fan, but yeah, it has a Spanish origin. And of course we have Bail Organa, which is played by a Hispanic actor, and Organa, it has a kind of Spanish taste to it. And then we have the famous Cantina, which is a translation of canteen in English means cantina in Spanish, so canteen and cantina. The obvious one is also, of course, Obi-Wan Kenobi, as well as the Jedi have a Japanese origin. Actually, it comes from the Rice novel, which has Jed or Jedak, but Jedi is a Japanese word, and Obi-Wan is sort of splitting a lot of little Japanese things together in one name. And also, it's a fact that Lucas wanted a Japanese actor for Obi-Wan. He also offered the same Japanese actor, Darth Vader, but he refused both roles. Even some of the foreign languages are very multicultural. If you listen closely to Huttese, which the Hutt speak, or Jawese, or the Ewokese, which is the Ewok language, it's a mixture of Native American, African languages. There's a lot of little interesting things mixed in. Even in the music with John Williams, if you listen closely, you're going to hear a lot of foreign languages in Duel of the Fates. It's not in English. He's doing some really interesting things with different languages. And even Japanese culture gets in with lightsaber dueling with the Bushido. So there's that as well. And it's not strictly just foreign languages. He also plays around with sort of our language as well. So for instance, Newt Gunray. I know some people think Star Wars is apolitical, but it's a pretty obvious reference to Newt Gingrich, who was a big Republican politician in the 1990s. So I think Lucas was having a little jab at Newt. There's even some interesting intertextual work. For instance, with Kylo Ren, most people realize that Kylo is taken from Luke Skywalker and Han Solo, but Kylo Ren actually can also have a connection to Nero, and Nero was a villain in a J.J. Abrams film. And then we get to Mundi, which is a mixture of a couple things. It's a mixture of Asian languages, but also the Latin, mundus for mundi or earth. So there's a kind of a interesting little mixture of different languages and cultures in each of all these people. So this has, again, been very quick. Obviously, there's a lot more to cover in terms of the various names that Lucas used in his mythologies. I'll just end with Yoda, because I'm not a big Yoda fan anymore, but Yoda can sort of mean a couple different things in Hebrew and Sanskrit. It obviously means something we would know, like warrior, right? But it means multiple things in different languages. I also think he's sort of evoking Yahweh, which is the original word for God. So I think Yoda can stand for a couple different things. Obviously, there's a lot more to cover. I've only scratched the surface. Saul Guerrera is also a Spanish word, though they're kind of mixing it up in his case. So yeah, obviously a lot more I could cover in terms of all the various names, their linguistic origin, and how they are not, again, repeat, not all Western European. Even the stuff that people think is Western European, like the King Arthur myth, is not British. It's actually comes from the French. So there's a lot of interesting stuff going on in terms of the background that Lucas is playing with. And when we turn to the sequel trilogy, it's more of the same thing. Again, I would agree it's not as creative. You have Rey, and Rey means king in Spanish, which is interesting, obviously, because Rey is very powerful. But yeah, I would agree it's not as creative as some of the older names or some of the older labels or languages. But still, a lot of multicultural influences that have been there from the very beginning of Star Wars. So if you do your homework, you'll see it. Okay, this has been Star Wars Analyzed on the linguistic origins of the Star Wars universe. Star Wars Analyzed, if you like the content, please hit the like button and or subscribe. Please be safe. Thanks for listening.